Next on the news, Floridians hunkered down and praying as Hurricane Ian makes landfall. Also,
dialogue with the Muslim community has been sort of a pillar of Francis's papacy from the beginning.
The Pope planning another historic visit. We'll speak with Elise Allen from Crux about the Holy Father's trip to Bahrain. And they are helping God's creatures, how volunteers are rescuing a wide variety of birds in Prospect Park. And we'll meet the first student in the world ever to get a perfect score on a well-known exam. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now.
Loving God, maker of heaven and earth, protect us in your love and mercy.
Prayers in Florida as Hurricane Ian batters the Sunshine State. The monster storm was packing winds of around 155 miles per hour as it made landfall in Florida on Wednesday. And time is up for residents in low-lying areas to evacuate. Gloria Pazmino has the story from Tampa.
It may appear to be calm at some point. You may just be in the eye of the storm, and the backside of that will get very, very nasty.
Hurricane Ian packing winds and rains that officials warn will cause catastrophic floods and life-threatening storm surge.
That's where we could really see those 12 to 18 feet of storm surge inundation above ground level. That's 3 times as tall as I am. So that's really an unsurvivable circumstance.
Ian caused a nationwide blackout in Cuba on Tuesday. And now Florida is dealing with mass power outages.
We also have line workers and line men and line women coming from 27 other states. They're positioned at 24 different locations throughout the state.
Schools, supermarkets, airports, and theme parks across the state have closed. Sarasota's mayor deciding to pull police officers from the city's streets due to the dangerous conditions.
At this point, all we have is ourselves as a community, so take care of your neighbors because we're in this together and we're going to make it through.
Cities across the Sunshine State bracing for Ian's impact.
We are about to feel the brunt of a near Category 5 hurricane in our area.
Gloria Pazmino, Currents News.
The Bishop of the Diocese of St. Petersburg, Gregory Parks, leading his flock in prayer ahead of the storm. He put it out on social media on Tuesday.
As we begin to feel the effects of this storm, I invite you to pray with me this prayer for protection during a storm. Loving God, maker of heaven and earth, protect us in your love and mercy. Send the Spirit of Jesus to be with us, to still our fears, and to give us confidence. In the stormy waters, Jesus reassured his disciples by his presence, calmed the storm, and strengthened their faith. Guard us from harm during this storm, and renew our faith to serve you faithfully. Give us the courage to face all difficulties and the wisdom to see the ways your Spirit binds us together in mutual assistance. With confidence, we make our prayer through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
We spoke with Bishop Parks on Tuesday about how the diocese was preparing for the storm and how it will help the faithful in the wake of Ian. Hurricane Ian's threshing of Cuba has left at least 2 people dead and the entire island nation without power. Ian made landfall as a Category 3 storm on Tuesday and devastated the western part of the island, flooding the roads in Havana and wreaking havoc on some of Cuba's major tobacco farms. Authorities began working overnight to restore power in the eastern region, but warned the process will be complicated as they move west. Turning now to the Vatican, the Holy See just confirmed that Pope Francis will be traveling to Bahrain in November. It's something the Holy Father had mentioned was possible on his trip back from Kazakhstan. Francis will be the first pope ever to visit that country. Pope Francis will travel to the Kingdom of Bahrain from November 3rd through the 6th. He'll participate in the Forum for Dialogue, an initiative created to promote dialogue between the East and West. The Vatican has not yet published the details of the trip, but has announced that the Pope will visit 2 cities, Manama and Awali. In December of 2021, the Cathedral of Our Lady of Arabia, patron saint of the Persian Gulf, was consecrated in Awali. The church was built by Mattia del Prete, an Italian architect under the artistic direction of Kiko Arguello, initiator of the Neo-Catechumenal Way.
È stato pensato.
The apostolic vicar in Arabia, Camilo Balin, thought of it as a reference point for the entire Persian Gulf. We have to keep in mind that the Catholic presence is important, with some 200,000 people, Filipinos and Indians, with a strong religious identity.
On his flight back from Kazakhstan, Pope Francis announced that he will continue to travel despite his knee problems.
È difficoltoso, come il ginocchio ancora non è guarito, ma questo prossimo lo farò.
This visit will be the 39th trip of Pope Francis's pontificate. In addition, he'll become the first pope to visit the Kingdom of Bahrain, located on the west coast of the Persian Gulf. Christians make up about 14% of the majority Muslim country's overall population. Joining us right now to talk more about the Holy Father's planned trip is Elise Allen, senior correspondent for Crux. Hi, Elise.
Hi, Christine.
So, Elise, this is all part of Pope Francis's plan to continue dialogue with the Muslim world. It's something he did on his recent trip to Kazakhstan. You traveled with the Pope there. What has he said about this?
Well, as you know, dialogue with the Muslim community has been sort of a pillar of Francis's papacy from the beginning. Ever since his election in 2013, he's really made an effort to reach out to the Muslim community and to the Islamic world as a whole. I think in part because of the rise of Islamic terrorism that kind of accompanied the beginning of his papacy. He really wanted to, as he would say, build bridges with that community. And he's done that consistently in speeches and in messages and in events and in trips. As you mentioned, he did that again in Kazakhstan earlier this month. He was there for an interfaith summit, a very high profile one with religious leaders and even civil leaders from all over the world, to really talk about the importance of dialogue and building peace throughout the world. And so, he constantly brings this up, especially when he's talking to Christians in who are a minority in a Muslim country. He really drives this point home of the need to make dialogue and to build bridges with different faith communities, especially with the Islamic communities. When you're in an Islamic country, so that's really important that you guys know how to interact and to dialogue and to build bridges. And he often comes out against the idea that all Muslims are terrorists. And he's talked about that. That's a point he's brought up consistently in his comments about interreligious dialogue. He's been careful to say not all Muslims are terrorists. We need to be careful of that. And we also have to condemn that when it happens. And so he's been clear about that, too. And he brought up that point as well in Kazakhstan. And perhaps we can hear him make a similar point in Bahrain.
Right. And while Bahrain is made up mostly of Muslims, it is home to the Gulf's first Catholic church and its biggest one, which we just talked about, Our Lady of Arabia Cathedral. Bahrain is relatively tolerant when it comes to religion compared to some of its neighbors. So what will the Holy Father's message be to the Christians living there?
Oftentimes when the Pope goes to countries where the Christians are a minority, he really tries to encourage them, to build them up. And he did this in Kazakhstan as well, because they're a minority there also. But he says, don't be afraid of your small numbers. Don't let that stop you. Keep going, keep doing your work, keep moving forward, and don't be discouraged. And so he really is offering a message of encouragement, and he'll talk a lot about peace. And again, the importance of dialogue, because when Christians are a minority, that point of dialogue is so important for him. He's really the Pope of building bridges. Mm-hmm. And so that's something I really think that he's also going to do when he travels to Bahrain at the beginning of next month, November.
Right, in November. Francis met with the King of Bahrain back in 2014 at the Vatican, and a big theme of that discussion was peace in the Middle East. So how much influence does Pope Francis really have in this area of the world?
Well, that's a good question, Christine. And I think that, in terms of all Christian leaders, the Pope being the leader of the Catholic Church, just by virtue of leading so many millions of people, has a certain authority that other Christian churches don't have. So I think that in itself brings a lot of authority, just holding the office that he does. But also, again, his consistent outreach to the Muslim community, I think, has brought home has really brought his message home to the Muslim community, especially in the Middle East. His constant preaching about peace, and in his trip to Iraq a couple of years ago was historic. It was his first trip, the first trip of a pope ever to the country, and I think that really sent a strong signal about his desire to engage. And I think when he speaks, people really listen in the Middle East. I think the religious leaders are very much paying attention to what he has to say.
All right, Elise Allen, senior correspondent for Crux. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Christine. It's a pleasure.
After only 2 days, a Hong Kong judge has adjourned the trial of Cardinal Joseph Zen along with his 4 other co-defendants. The trial began Monday and had been scheduled to last 5 days, but the magistrate adjourned the trial when defense lawyers attempted to cross-examine police witnesses called by the prosecution. The trial will now resume on October 26th. The retired Bishop of Hong Kong and the other defendants are accused of failing to properly register a humanitarian relief fund, which offered financial and legal help to people arrested during the 2019 protest movement. To the war in Ukraine now. Thousands of Russian men are trying to escape the draft instituted by Moscow. They're heading to Finland, Georgia, Kazakhstan, anywhere they won't be pulled into the war. Melissa Bell reports from the Georgian-Russian border.
A week after the announcement of the partial mobilization, 300,000 fighting-age men to be drafted to the Ukrainian front lines, the exodus of young Russians continued. Here at the Lars crossing between Russia and Georgia, as you can see, they come on bicycles, on foot, carrying what little they could. A lot of them have left jobs as math teachers, students, leaving their Russian cities, many of them their families behind at the very last minute, and with a tremendous sense of urgency. What they tell us is that they fear, first of all, the way the partial mobilization so far has been enacted, the fact that it isn't just, they say, those who are eligible that have been drafted in. They are worried, they say, about having to fight on the front lines or find themselves in prison, and this, they feared, might be their last chance to go. Others worry that this is a partial mobilization that could yet become a full one, and some speak also of their worries that this kind of border post may at some point be closed down altogether. One man telling us a moment ago that he simply doesn't feel he can trust his government again. A lot of them telling us about their fears also about the war and what it means, saying they simply didn't want to fight their cousins, their brothers in Ukraine, and the fact that they might be forced to do so was just the step too far. They felt they had no choice now but to go. Melissa Bell's on the Georgia-Russia border.
The U.S. Embassy in Moscow has issued a security alert urging Americans to leave Russia while there's still options for departing the country. The alert says Russian officials may refuse to acknowledge the U.S. citizenship of dual nationals, deny their access to the consulate for help, and prevent their departure from the country. It's also suspected that Russia may enlist dual nationals for military service. Voicing his support for the people of Ukraine was Lithuania's President Gitanas Nausėda, and the tablet was there to cover it. He recently visited the Diocese of Brooklyn, stopping by Annunciation of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church in Williamsburg to speak with a group of Lithuanian Americans living in New York. If you'd like to learn more about the Lithuanian leader's visit, then be sure to pick up a copy of the tablet newspaper at your local church. And if you're interested in getting future editions of the tablet newspaper sent straight to your mailbox, then visit thetablet.org and click subscribe. There's a lot more news headed your way. They're saving the lives of God's creatures. Next, how volunteers are rescuing the many species of wild birds in Prospect Park. And celebrations at a Catholic academy in the Diocese of Brooklyn that received its accreditation. Plus, a possible breakthrough in the battle against Alzheimer's, the new drug that could slow the decline in patients.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
There are hundreds of species of birds in Prospect Park, but those that live in the lake are especially susceptible to the dangers of fishing and litter. Currents News' Jessica Easthope introduces us to the volunteers who are dedicated to protecting the wildlife.
Bottle ring, I'm going to take this. Bottle rings. This is just a snippet fishing line. And this is why I don't leave home without my grabby stick. Plastic bags. Mary Beth Arts knows picking up this trash in Prospect Park is a matter of life or death, especially for Evan. Hi, Evan! Evan's not a person. Good boy! He's a swan. One of the many Mary Beth and her teams of volunteers watch over and protect.
Since the pandemic, it seems a lot more people out, a lot more trash. We just need to learn how to share the space with our wildlife.
Just have to keep watch over his feet, though.
Mary Beth is a licensed wildlife rehabilitator and a founding member of both Wild for Prospect Park and the Swan Squad.
This looks like a bad one.
They rescue the birds that call the lake home. They've made 31 rescues this year alone.
Got it.
Mary Beth and other volunteers like Sarah Wagner have the same goal, keeping the animals safe. But over the years, they've grown to have much more in common.
We're almost like a family now. Each of us empower the other. People see you doing things, and we're doing it in a group, and they see that they can also do it.
To have these relationships is really what's sustaining, and those relationships are with each other as volunteers. It's the relationships that we have to the park, to the trees, to the animals.
And it's not all about the rescue. Part of Mary Beth's mission is actually to educate people on the wildlife here in Prospect Park. What Evan and his friends are doing right now is taking oil from an oil gland in the back of their bodies and rubbing it all over their feathers. It's how they stay waterproof.
We're passing it along, and the more people that know, then the better off we'll all be.
Mary Beth says she's constantly reminded of her Catholic faith when she's in the park and in her element.
St. Francis is my patron saint. I just feel that we need to become better stewards of the wildlife.
If she has one message, it's you don't have to rescue birds to save them. All you need to do is take more out than you came in with. In Prospect Park, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
It was a day of wellness and even some pampering for residents at a Brooklyn senior center. Catholic Charities celebrated Senior Center Recognition Day at St. Charles Jubilee Senior Center in Brooklyn Heights. The seniors took part in an exercise class, blood pressure screenings, and they were even able to get chair massages. The center serves about 90 seniors a day, a handful of whom travel a great distance just to be a part of the community.
Each senior center has its own personality. And so when a senior fits and feels that they've found their people, I'm not surprised that they would want to travel to come and hang out with people that they feel are their peers and that they're like-minded in some way. Our interests are very, kind of like arts-driven. Health, the seniors here love their exercise classes. That's probably across the board. I think seniors in all the senior centers love their exercise classes.
The St. Charles Jubilee Center was established in 1973 and will mark its 50th anniversary next year. And according to the Department of Aging, there are 250 senior citizen centers in the city. Congratulations are in order for the faculty and staff at St. Ephraim Catholic Academy in Dyker Heights. The pre-K through 8th grade school has officially received accreditation through Cognia, a nonprofit that recognizes schools and systems that best exemplify excellence in education. Not only does the achievement confirm that St. Ephraim provides exceptional care for their students, it also symbolizes their dedication to growth. A possible break in the fight against Alzheimer's disease. Drug makers Biogen and AZI say an antibody treatment for Alzheimer's slowed the progression of participants' cognitive decline by 27%. The drug, called lecanemab, was tested in 3 global clinical trials. The companies plan to publish the findings and present data in order to seek approval from U.S. regulators by next year. It's been more than a week since Hurricane Fiona struck Puerto Rico, and many are still reeling from the aftermath. Tuesday night, protesters gathered outside of the governor's mansion in Puerto Rico, voicing their frustrations with Luma, the island's only electric provider. Last year, the American-Canadian company took over Puerto Rico's electricity with the intention of repairing the grid. However, protesters say the outages are still as frequent, if not worse, than before. But as far as the recovery efforts go, the island still has a long road ahead. Deacon Asterio Velasco, the director of Hispanic ministry for the Archdiocese of Newark, says much of Puerto Rico's infrastructure is still in dire need of repair after back-to-back hurricanes struck the island 5 years ago. Velasco saw the damage firsthand while on a mission trip over the summer and says that more than 1,000 Catholic schools, churches, and facilities are still suffering from the aftermath of Hurricanes Maria and Irma. Still to come on Currents News, he's an Army veteran with a new mission. Next, how he's keeping the schools in his community safe. And he's the first student in the world ever to get a perfect score on a super tough exam. We'll hear from him next. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. He's an Army veteran in Washington State who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Now he's on a different mission to keep the schools in his community safe, the ones his daughters attend. Drew Mickelson has the story.
Good girl. With service dog Jude by his side. Good girl, good girl. And his sidearm at his hip.
What I like about this area is you can see pretty much the entire opening.
Anthony Triplett Jr. is back on patrol.
Knives, bullets, maybe a stray firearm.
Triplett served 2 combat tours in Afghanistan before a leg injury forced his medical retirement from the Army. After the Uvalde shootings in May, he felt he was called back to duty by his 2 daughters, who were students in the North Thurston district.
It was my kids and other kids asking me, hey, what are they doing to keep us safer? Oh, I remember you. It's you.
Not enough, said Triplett. And since May, he has volunteered talking to students off campus and walking the sidewalks surrounding North Thurston schools about 20 hours a week.
That's a good girl.
He has not needed to act, but says he's ready.
If I were to hear an explosion or gunshots or something like that, see a crowd of students running out of, and they said that there's someone firing, I'm going in.
While everything Triplett does is legal, Thurston County Sheriff would like Triplett to leave the security to the professionals. State Senator Patty Kuderer says she empathizes with Triplett and says what he is doing, quote, is a damning statement of where we are as a society, and it is high time that politicians stand up to the gun lobby and take smart, data-proven steps to reduce the threats of gun violence.
What's the better alternative that we can do right now to keep our kids safe?
Triplett knows what he's doing makes some uncomfortable.
Good girl.
But he says he's making schools safer.
We leave our kids vulnerable, and it doesn't feel right to me. It's not that the schools aren't doing enough. I want the educators to be able to educate. Good girl.
That was Drew Mickelson reporting. Anthony says it's not that the schools aren't doing enough. He just wants to make sure the students are able to learn safely. And finally tonight, a school in Indiana is celebrating one of its students who was able to achieve something no one else in the world has been able to. A perfect score on an AP calculus exam. Junior Felix Zhang made educational history as the first and only person to ace the exam. He says he was surprised by the result, but his calculus teacher wasn't.
Felix did everything. I mean, all the credit should go to Felix and the hard work he does. I'm just glad I can be his teacher and sort of guide him through and help him along and to reach his full potential.
I wanted to do well on it, and I prepared a lot, but I never actually thought about getting a perfect score before.
But it seems math is in his blood. Both of Felix's parents are math professors, so I guess he had an edge, right? That is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.